Hello everyone, welcome to the editorial analysis of the Shankar IAS Academy brought to you by the Cybersecurity team. So these are the topics for discussion for the editorial articles. So article title A Different Way Forward from the Indian Express talks about the importance of the layoffs in big companies and their impact. Next article title Keeping the Watch on Growing Arc of Violence from the Hindu insists about the rising terrorism and its related wings such as cyberterrorism and digital radicalization and their impact. So in light of these articles, let us see their discussions. So looking in the article titled Keeping a Watch on the Growing Arc of Violence. So the article discusses about the rising arc of terrorism in areas especially of Ukraine, Gaza and in the West Asia, and also other wings related to terrorism such as the digital radicalization and other forms of terrorism. So the article discusses about way ahead and bringing in counter-terrorism mechanisms, especially in the age of cyber terrorism as well as in the age of digital radicalization. So the article would be discussing more on the concepts and the different terms related to terrorism, and we'll be seeing the constitutional amendments and other frameworks related to it. So this is the question. How has the global terrorism evolved with digital radicalization and decentralized networks? Suggest measures to counter threats like cyber terrorism and lone wolf attacks. So first we should know the understanding of the term terrorism and countering the threat. So according to the Unlawful Activity Prevention Act of 1967, the definition for terrorism goes like this: acts which are threatening the India's unity, integrity, security or sovereignty. So any act which is against India's whole unity on its diversity, on its whole integrity of both people as well as its place, and having security issues of both its people, place and their ideologies or their cultural heritage, and also on sovereignty, would be defined as a terrorism act. So it also involves causing death, injury, property damage or disruption of essential services or routine, where the routine activities of any people are disrupted, would be knowing as an act of terrorism. So how would the terrorism is defined by the means which they occur, that is using bombs, explosives, firearms or other hazardous substances, and their aim would be to create fear and coercion. So coercion is nothing but having a friction or a tension, and this would be the whole definition of what terrorism means. Now let us look into terrorism and its evolution. So how the network of terrorism involves: first, it has activity under the subterranean places, such as having hidden networks where there is mostly discontinuation of contact with the people around the areas. So it can be underground activities and so on. Next is having decentralized networks, that is having small and independent units, thus it is harder to track, let it be the people or let it be their infrastructure or any units. So there won't be any doubt. Next is having encrypted communication, that is having a secure communication or a secure protection or a lock through the apps that they are using or through the digital space that they are using, so that there is no tracking of their communication, that is to avoid detection mainly. Next is having covert recruitment. Here there are certain groups or hidden online forums or platforms which aid, that is which help for the growing of such terrorist groups or such isolated groups, and they act as a private groups to help them, where they can have communication with the outside world also. Next would be having financial concealment. Here they would be bringing in fake businesses, they'd be having cryptocurrencies as their money, so there is it is very difficult to track. And finally having sleeper cells, who are known to be as an inactive members, who would be way along with the normal people leading a normal life, where they would be seen as a normal people, where they would be seen leading a normal life, but they would be activated, that is they would be taken into for their work when a time is needed. So this is the terrorism and their evolution. Now we should see what the article discusses. So here the article mainly discusses the rise of digital radicalization in terrorism. So here we can break the words. Digital is having mostly the use of internet, and radicalization means it is any idea or ideology which is very extreme in nature. So this perspective or this ideology is being used in terrorism mainly, that is digital radicalization, the use of digital platform for spreading or radicalizing their ideologies. First we should see how, through the social media influence. First, having messing up with the algorithms or having a propaganda, attracting followers through having a social media influence, and we can take example of dark web. Next is having echo chambers and algorithms, as I told before, where they reinforce the extremist views. And even us, when we are using our social media nowadays, especially in recent years, we can see how the algorithm has been impacted us a lot. If we talk about anything, let it be about any social media app or anything about clothing, shopping and so on, the next minute when we take our phone, when we are using social media, we'll be getting ads according to the things that we speak, where we see it as a coincidence, but there is a lot of logic behind it, where the algorithms has been tracked, and there has been a database on what are the things that we like and don't like. So imagine us having this much influence on algorithm. Imagine them, the largest terrorist groups, where they would be having a large algorithms which can influence a lot of people, that is to reinforce their extremist ideas. Next is through virtual communities, that such as belongings and drawing them into the extremism. Having a group of people in their virtual reality or virtual community, where that would be the only way to talk. And next is having anonymity and accessibility. Here there is exploration of extremist content without fear. So here putting in their extremist ideas without any fear of algorithms, or without any fear of spreading of such extremist ideas, are a biggest threat when it comes to digital radicalization. And next is gamification of terror. So this term is basically having game like tactics to attract the recruits. So they involve a lot of apps to bring in the idea of gaming, so that they get interested in the ideology, and then they first make sure that they are in that point of view of that game, and then they get into that action immediately. Next is involvement of cyber terrorism. Here it defines as the acts which are threatening a nation's unity, integrity, security or sovereignty through the cyber, that is the internet means. So here it is, the intent is to again instill the terror among the people. And also the article talks about the term lone wolf attacks. So according to the definition, it is the individuals acting independently without any direct orders from the main group. So even without any orders or even without any nod from them, they would be acting in an extremist way on their own manner. So they would be an individual. So they bring in the idea of online radicalization, where there is self radicalization through online extremist content. And it is very challenging in detecting them, because it's not a group, it doesn't have a big network, but it is them as a one single person. So there is minimal communication and trails too difficult to predict. So the article mainly discusses about the rise of radical digital radicalization, cyber terrorism, and the rise of lone wolf attacks. So let us see a way ahead to counter these known as counter-terrorism initiatives under the cybersecurity. First one would be the National Cybercrime Reporting Portal under the Ministry of Home Affairs. So their intent is to having public reporting and enhancing their law enforcement. Next is having Indian Cybercrime Coordination Center, which is known as I4C, where they get into the idea of research, training, capacity building to counter the terrorism, having a database under the Cybercrime Center. And next is Cyber Swachhta Kendra under the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, where they help in detecting and cleaning the malicious software, where any software or any data which has been recognized or identified as a threat, it would be removed and it would be detected, and there is a process to identify such malware softwares. First we have seen under cybersecurity, next is under counter the radicalization. The counter-terrorism, counter-radicalization and counter-radicalization division under the Ministry of Home Affairs work under the policy formation and having preventing the idea of radicalization. So before we have seen under cyber sector, now we are seeing under the radicalization sector, where there is importance of bringing down the impact of the ideologies. Next is monitoring online content. Here there is identifying and removing of extremist content. So a lot of apps, social media apps are having settings and so on to modify the content and removing the content when it is more extreme. And next is strengthening the intelligence and law enforcement. Here under this, the National Investigation Agency is working for the terrorism, acts as a statutory body under the NIA, that is National Investigation Act of 2008. So here they investigate and prosecute terrorism including digital crimes. So we're looking into their members component. The Union Minister, Home Minister is the ex officio chairperson, and the Director General of the NIA heads the agency. And next is the multi-agency center, where there is intelligence sharing, that is the data or the confidential ideas or data available, which is sharing among the agencies. Now, looking into the legal framework for counter-terrorism, first one would be, as I told, the Unlawful Activities of Prevention Act of 1967. Here, preventing unlawful activities and banning terrorism groups. Next would be Prevention of Money Laundering Act of 2002, where there is preventing terror financing and seizing of the properties which are suspicious in nature with adequate evidences. Next would be the IT Act, that is the Information Technology Act of 2000. Here there is covering cyber terrorism and digital radicalization. And next is the Arms Act of 1959, where there is regulation of firearms. And under the global level, first one would be the UN Global Counter-Terrorism Strategy. Here it addresses conditions on terrorism and the conditions related to terrorism. Then there is prevention and including checking of the state capacity, which can be both in policy nature as well as in materialistic nature. Next can be Global Counter-Terrorism Forum of 2011. Here it brings in the idea of reducing global vulnerability, and there is resource mobilization, and there is resource uh, tracking of both the terrorist groups as well as for the people to be more equipped with. Next is the Financial Action Task Force Compliance, where there is prevention of terrorist financing acts and monitoring other virtual currencies, which is related to terrorist groups. And next would be Global Internet Forum to Counter Terrorism. Here they prevent terrorism from exploiting the digital platform. Now looking into the next article here, titled A Different Way Forward, which in culture that equates productivity with purpose. So the article here mainly discusses about the mass layoffs in big techs or big companies like Meta, like Amazon, Microsoft, and even Google, especially in the year 2025. So here mass layoffs is nothing but discharging of workers. It can be both temporary or permanent because of shortage of work, and also to certain economic or social or other conditions related to the uh, working of the company. So in layman terms, it is nothing but discharging of the workers who are no more in use for the company. So this has direct impact in a lot of the employment phenomena when it comes to a country, where it involves almost every categories of people, that is the youth, that is the adult, that is the working uh, the mid working population, as well as older people. So it's not just a question of the company alone, but it is also a question of a global crisis when it comes to both employment, and where it has its direct consequences to the economic conditions of the society as well as of the people. So in light of this article, let us see the consequences. First, having job instability and its implications. So here, mass layoffs impact would bring in first a financial insecurity for anyone who is into the company or dependent on the company, and having unstable, and it leads to having unstable career paths. So here, without any knowledge, or immediately, or like abruptly taking off any workers from a company would bring in a unstable career paths. So looking into the main causes, first is having a economic slowdown. So for example, we can take the example of inflation and so on, where it creates an uncertainty, having a decline in the demand of a particular product of a particular company, and also even cost cutting many finances related to that company, where there is no need of certain departments or certain work that would be taking off those workers. So first would be the economic slowdown. Next is corporate restructuring, where the company wants to have a restructuring, such as downsizing their company, let it be both in finance as well as in the infrastructure. Next is having inclusion of automation businesses, for example, including the AI, where there is lesser work for the human and there is automation driven infrastructure, so there is less work for the workers in itself. And other business shifts, such as cut shorting their budgets, or including in new policies, or merging with other companies, can be corporate restructuring. And next is tech volatility. So here, rapid innovations in their mechanisms, having market saturation, and also investor shifts. For example, they are investor, they are fund, any fund companies which are aiding the other companies can have in a different ideas. So there is involvement of many technologies. Change in the company can also lead to job instability and mass layoffs. So it ultimately leads to social consequences of the workers who are involved, where there is rising unemployment, leading to underemployment, as there is change in their career path, and having reduced social mobility or career mobility at the end of the worker, as well as having its impact in the society. Now looking into the economical and psychological impact, because in this year we have seen a lot of cases where, due to mental disorder, due to depression and so on, there are a lot of workers who are uh, losing their lives, and it leads to casualties. And also, especially this generation of Gen Z are having more perspectives or interpretations when it comes to their mental health. So first is having the mental health crisis, that is anxiety, depression and stress. So the mental health crisis plays an important role when it comes to the mass layoffs, where ultimately, if any worker would be totally dependent on one work and doesn't have any recommendations from other works or other friends, it would be a problem. This would be the loss of professional identity. So one having their self being a skilled worker would be struggling to find a suitable job just because they are taken off from that company abruptly. Next is having skill mismatch. Here the underemployment affects the motivation and productivity of the worker ultimately, and even if they get selected by different companies, the skills that they have would not be the same with the previous company they have worked. And next would be the urge or the need for action, where their social security, psychological support and workforce reskilling will be a question ultimately. Now looking into the role of AI, which can be both the disruptor as well as the opportunity, which can have both its pros and cons. So looking into their role in the mass layoffs, first is having a skill evolution. So here first, there is a high demand for the AI, such as in departments like having literacy, bringing in the coding, and having computerization and data analytics. So even there is quantification of a big data through the role of algorithms and through the role of data analytics, anything can be made easy. So it ultimately brings in the different departments of skill evolution. Next is the need of policy needs related to AI. So here the digital literacy programs and AI job policies and ethical AI regulations need to be having a enforcement as well as a framework for it to be regularized properly. Next is having human AI collaboration. Here, bringing in the new roles of AI, such as the ethics, having AI specialist, having AI automation, and having AI supervisors. Here we can take example of the chat GTP, where there is innovation of both human mind as well as the AI, would be a great opportunity for addressing the issue of mass layoffs. And next, even though it has its pros, the next ultimate con would be the job displacement. Ultimately, if a work is done by an AI, it replaces the roles of human in itself in some departments such as the customer service, data entry, and software. Since even at one point typewriting was a biggest job anyone would have, but now since there has been an ease made in the place of data entry, and even typing can be done through voice automation and having software regulation, so it ultimately diminishes the purpose of a human in a company in itself. Now, looking into the challenges of job instability, especially in the year 2025, related to the article, first would be the economic challenges, that is the rising unemployment. So, the loss of high paying jobs affecting their spending and service industries, ultimately having a effect in the market demand and supply. Next would be the skill mismatch. Here, traditional skills becoming waste or obsolete, where they might go into a space where they can't use its skill and losing creativity. Next is having inequality, where mid-level jobs are disappearing and AI specialists are only benefiting. So at one point, the middle person is not having been benefited, and it's like at another point, the workers who are entitled in the AI department are getting benefited. So it ultimately leads the groups to having haves and have nots. Next, and having workforce productivity decline. So these layoffs demotivate the employees. It also uh, uh, takes away the trust when it comes to joining any private partnerships or joining any private companies, especially for both employees as well as on the company's name in itself. Next, psychological and social challenges. Now, after the impact of knowing the social and psychological challenges, the loss of identity in itself will become a struggle for the person who's having post layoffs, where their professional identity is highly hindered. Next is having financial stress related to the anxiety and depression, and having social polarization, where there is that ethical conflict or ideological conflict between both the AI driven versus the traditional employment gap widening. So here we can see how different groups, that is the elder group and the youth group, can be performing. That can be taken as an example of both the millennials as well as the Gen Zs. And looking into the technological challenges, again AI adaptation, outspacing the upskilling, replacing the skilling gap. Over reliance on AI can be as a challenge because of that impact, where job redundancy in logistic customer service can be totally dependent on a machine, and having ethical issues. So having bias in AI hiring, lack of social safety nets. So even that person would be in a resume, they would be very skilled, just because a particular department has been having a higher impact, even that resume won't have any value. So there would be a bias in even hiring. Now, looking into policy and governance challenge, first is having weak labor laws. Here in India, especially, there is lack of protection from abrupt layoffs. It's only the workers in the economy are subjected to poverty, subjected to economic and social challenges, whereas there isn't any law for to protect them. Next is slow response to reskilling needs. So there is very limited workforce for the transition programs for anyone to have their reskilling programs. It's not that there is a separate company for anyone out there to take people who are in the layoffs department. And next is inadequate social security. Having absence of universal basic income idea, especially for people who are in the companies, and unemployment benefits can also be taken in account. Here this point stands as a very different point, because here, as I told before, there isn't any company for different company to take only the layoffs person, and there isn't any unemployment benefits who are taken out of that company because of situation of some other company, and it's not because of them alone. Now, looking into way forward, first is strengthening the workforce resilience, that is reskilling and upskilling departments need to be there, AI training, having digital literacy, having cyber security, and involving of the public private collaboration, where having in industry academic partnerships, for example, can be taken into account for training and research and development. Next is policy intervention for job security, strong labor laws, universal basic income, and having employment insurance, so that they would be strengthened through social security benefits and there is lesser unemployment. Next is ethical AI responsible automation. Here regulation of the AI layoffs need to be enforced, as it can increase the transparency in the AI based job decisions, as it can be the obligation of any worker who is supposed to be layoff need to be taken in the decision deciding committee and so on. And next is human AI collaboration and having policies promoting AI assisted work. Next would be diversifying employment opportunities, and finally bringing in the innovation of entrepreneurship and economy into account, where there is tax intensive and also increasing of the microfinancing. So through this innovation and creativity, there is job opportunities even through the minutest of the economy. And next is having green job investments. You're bringing in sustainable energy, electric mobility, and climate resilient job allocations or innovations can help in the managing the layoffs and not leaving the workers abruptly in the global society without any social protection. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to give a like, comment and share. And to further not to miss any other contents, subscribe to our channel. Thank you and have a nice day.